Welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you really want to understand how people operate, you are exactly where you need to be. Today, we're unpacking the hidden mechanics of social dynamics. We're going to draw from some deep psychological research to decode exactly what is happening right beneath the surface of our everyday interactions.
Have you ever agreed to something, maybe taking on an extra project at work or buying something you definitely didn't need, and then literally, the second you did it, you wondered, wait, why did I just say yes to that? Or maybe you felt this sudden shift in a room's energy, but you just couldn't put your finger on what caused it. Well, that's the invisible world of psychology at play. And today, we're going to make that invisible world visible.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting 5 key areas. First, reading the unspoken cues. Second, the art of persuasion. Third, the weapon of silence. Fourth, navigating dark psychology. And finally, becoming untouchable. Let's just dive right in. Starting off with Section 1, reading the unspoken cues. It's actually fascinating how easily we can decode physical cues if we just stop to pay attention. We all know a strong handshake signals confidence, right? But folded arms, well, they aren't always about someone just being cold. They very often signal conversational unease or a need for a kind of defensive shield. And think about constant fidgeting. Society often tells us that fidgeting means someone is bored or ignoring us, but psychologically, it actually points to social discomfort or nervousness. When you see someone fidgeting, they aren't tuning you out. Their brain is just desperately trying to process uncertainty.
Moving right along to Section 2, the art of persuasion.
First up here is a super powerful concept called the chameleon effect. The absolutely crucial point is this: humans naturally trust those who look and act like them. It's wired into us. By subtly mimicking someone's posture, their hand gestures, or even the pace at which they speak, you create this unconscious bond of rapport. Suddenly, they feel like you just get them, and that makes them significantly more agreeable to whatever ideas you're putting out there.
And this brings us to a brilliantly counterintuitive trick known as the Ben Franklin effect. Conventional wisdom tells us, hey, if you want people to like you, do favors for them. But psychology actually says the exact opposite. You should ask them for a small favor. Why? Well, when they help you, their brain experiences a little thing called cognitive dissonance. It essentially asks, wait, why am I helping this person? And then it resolves that tension by concluding, well, I must really like them. It's just a fascinating little glitch in human nature.
Let's see how this builds into practical application, say when you're managing an unmotivated coworker. If you tell them to tackle a massive task all at once, they're going to resist, hard. But simply changing your phrasing to something like, hey, just start with this, makes the task feel psychologically tiny. Then you praise that small win, say, very good, and follow up with, now continue with this. You are essentially creating a ladder of productivity that completely bypasses their natural resistance. It's a real game changer.
Another massive pillar of persuasion is the anchoring effect. Our brains rely way too heavily on the very first piece of information we encounter. Whether it's a salary negotiation or, buying a jacket at the store, whoever drops the first number completely anchors the reality of that conversation. If I present a $300 jacket first, the $150 jacket sitting right next to it suddenly feels like an absolute steal, even if it's completely overpriced.
Okay, let's pivot to Section 3, the weapon of silence.
Silence creates a psychological vacuum that the human brain is just desperate to fill. Okay, right there. Did you notice how uncomfortable that brief little pause felt? Most people simply cannot handle silence. They'll rush to fill it. And in doing so, they often start babbling, they reveal the truth, or they end up offering unplanned concessions they never intended to make.
Weaponizing that pause is incredibly versatile. If you ask a question and get a really evasive answer, don't just jump in and ask another question. Just maintain eye contact and stay perfectly silent. They will elaborate. Or in a negotiation, drop your offer and just wait. Honestly, the person who rushes to fill the silence is almost always the one losing power in that dynamic. Plus, if someone insults you, ignoring it and withholding commentary preserves strategic ambiguity. Silence projects this unbothered authority that words simply cannot match.
Now we're descending a bit deeper. Section 4, navigating dark psychology.
First up in the darker toolkit is a tactic known as the yes ladder. Manipulators know for a fact that you'll say no to a massive request right out of the gate. So, what do? They start small. They ask for a tiny, totally harmless commitment. Then, a slightly larger favor to build momentum. By the time they drop the massive request, like asking for a promotion, they've built so much momentum that your brain feels saying no is completely unnatural. This step-by-step escalation relies entirely on our deep-seated psychological need to remain consistent with our past behaviors.
Now, check out the illusion of choice. A direct request, like, "Do you want to go out to eat?" invites a yes or no defense. It gives the other person control. But asking, "Should we hit Pizza Hut or Domino's?" completely bypasses that resistance. You're offering two choices that both lead to your desired outcome. The target feels totally in control of the decision, while you're the one quietly pulling the strings the whole time.
As we dig into Machiavellian maneuvers, it becomes super clear that these darker tactics rely heavily on flipping human nature against itself. Take the guilt trap. It bypasses logic entirely by triggering pure emotion to force compliance. Or false memory planting. This relies on the terrifying fact that if a lie is repeated with enough emotion and detail, our brains will literally build false memories around it. Manipulators will also manufacture loyalty by letting you compromise your own morals for them, or break alliances by planting these subtle little seeds of doubt to erode group trust.
Which brings us to this absolutely incredible quote. Power doesn't come from shouting, it comes from positioning. This is a profound Machiavellian insight. It reminds us that true authority is quiet, it's patient, and it is entirely based on where you place yourself on the board. Manipulators don't attack your strength. They wait for you to assume decency, and they arrange the conditions so that any response you make works against you.
Finally, our last phase, Section 5, Becoming Untouchable.
You really have to recognize the trap of predictability. Listen, manipulators actively hunt for predictability. So-called good people generally assume shared fairness, they rush to explain themselves, and they try to maintain total consistency. But to survive strategic, dirty players, you must adopt the tactics of the second column. You have to stay silent, observe their patterns, use delayed responses, and basically remain unreadable. In this game, predictability equals exposure.
One of the absolute best ways to do this is a concept called controlled weakness. If you show up as perfectly dominant and strong all the time, others are going to put their guard up and hide their motives. But by intentionally allowing small flaws to be seen, or maybe not always showing exactly how competent you are, you let others drop their guard. They start to underestimate you, they feel safe, they get sloppy, and boom, they expose their true intentions.
Now here is a massive takeaway for you. When you stop explaining yourself, you instantly remove the material that manipulators use to twist your narrative and challenge your boundaries. Remember, dirty players don't argue facts, they dissect your reasoning. When you constantly justify your decisions, you're literally handing them ammunition. Denying them an explanation starves them of that ammo. Authority announces decisions, it doesn't beg for approval. So, by implementing these defensive barriers, you cut off the emotional access that manipulators so desperately need. First, drop the fairness trap. You have to react to reality, not your ideals of how people should act. Second, use delayed responses. A sudden pause totally disrupts their expectation of a quick emotional reaction. Third, don't be afraid to just walk away, to create fear and deny them an audience. And most importantly, anchor your identity internally, not through external validation, so their subtle jabs just can't disorient you.
This legendary quote from Machiavelli perfectly encapsulates our goal for this entire explainer. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. You cannot just be strong, and you cannot just be clever. You need the cunning of the fox to spot the psychological traps being laid out for you, and you need the strength of the lion to confidently deter the wolves from ever trying to play you.
We have covered some incredible ground today, from the subtle tilt of a confident handshake all the way down to the silent, strategic mastery of the Machiavellian mind. So now that you can see the invisible traps in the room, how will you use this superpower in your next interaction? Will you weaponize the pause? Will you spot the illusion of choice? Take these tools, step back into the real world, and completely redefine your daily social dynamics. Thanks for learning with me today on This Explainer.